This week from Al-Musawat Radio. Al-Musawat Radio is the right place to know everything. Welcome to all of you, dear listener. This is the weekly news coverage coming your way with This Week from Al-Musawat radio station. Alright, dear listeners, the beginning goes with Prime Minister calls on to de-escalate the ongoing tensions in the country. The cabinet holds its regular session headed by Prime Minister Mustafa Al-Kadhimi, during which he confirmed his readiness to hand over power to any elected government. Al-Kadhimi expressed his regret for what is happening, as the Iraqi people do not deserve this circumstance but rather deserve the best, and that we sacrifice for the sake of the people and the future, noting that the political dispute has begun to reflect on the service reality in the state, and therefore we must look for a solution, calling on all parties to engage in dialogue in all seriousness. Parliament Speaker Mohammed Al-Halbousi and Prime Minister Mustafa Al-Kadhimi discussed means to strengthen understandings to get out of the current crisis. During the meeting, views were exchanged and the latest developments in the political and parliamentary situation were discussed, and means to enhance understandings at the level of national political forces within the framework of the initiative presented by Al-Kadhimi to get out of the current crisis and to set solutions to the ongoing tensions for the interests of the Iraqi people. The two parties also presented during the meeting joint visions aiming at strengthening the course of the constitution and the law, putting the interests of the citizen first, and taking into account that its results are the true expression of the will of the Iraqi people and their aspirations for sustainable security and stability. The President of the Republic, Ahmed Salah, has lauded the role of the Vatican and the efforts of the Supreme Pontiff, His Holiness Pope Francis, in support and concern for the security and stability of Iraq and its people, and the consolidation of a culture of love and tolerance among the world's peoples, as he received the ambassador of the Vatican State to Iraq, Mitya Laskovar. During the meeting, they discussed the joint bilateral relations between the two friendly countries, ways to develop them, broadening the horizons of joint cooperation in all fields, and joint coordination to promote a culture of coexistence, dialogue, and convergence for peace. Independent High Electoral Commission denies setting a date for yearly elections, illustrating that the Commission is a neutral professional institution that implements decisions issued regarding elections, referendums, and other matters related to electoral work, noting that the Board of Commissioners is the supreme authority in the Independent High Electoral Commission, and it is concerned with setting a date or time period required to conduct any electoral process, based on the effective election law, of course, confirming that the Board of Commissioners didn't issue any decision or statement in this regard. Prime Minister Mustafa Al-Kadhimi has laid the foundation stone for the reconstruction of Mosul International Airport, noting that Mosul International Airport will give several opportunities in different fields to the province of Nineveh and neighboring areas in the transport of goods and passengers, confirming that there are tremendous efforts to rebuild the city of Mosul, subject to direct follow-up by His Excellency himself. The matter which ensures that these projects and works are completed as soon as possible to serve the people of Nineveh, and in order for the citizen to see real results of reconstruction. The Kurdish parties hold a meeting after an invitation from the president of the region, Najjar Barzani, in the presence of United Nations Secretary General Special Representative for Iraq and head of the United Nations Assistance Mission for Iraq UNAMI, Jenan Plaskart. The meeting is attended by several major parties in the region, including the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, the Movement for Change, the Kurdistan Islamic Union, the Socialist Party, and the Communist Party, during which the reports of the parties prepared after the last meeting are discussed, in addition to discussing the political situation and the issue of the deciding of the President of the Republic. The Council of the Advisors in the Presidency of the Council of Ministers holds a consultative meeting to discuss the draft of the Iraqi National Report prepared for the summit of the United Nations General Assembly, which aims to bring about transformation in education until 2030. Well-informed resources mentioned that the report comes in light of the United Nations Secretary General invitation to hold the Education Transformation Summit 2022, due to be held on September 19th, as the participating countries, including Iraq, will review their national reports that focus on various axes. The Ministry of Electricity sets the date for the completion of the connection with Saudi Arabia and the paths of the lines, connection points, and work mechanisms, noting that the first phase of the agreement will include 1,000 megawatts, and the file of importing gas from Qatar needs the cooperation of 4 ministries, of which they are Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Oil, and Ministry of Electricity, in order to establish special platforms for liquefied gas and prepare docks and ports, as well as allocating funds for importing gas. The ministry also indicates that Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi directed the acceleration of these achievements to diversify energy sources, as the ministry is moving forward in this regard. Ministry of Electricity announces the reoperation of all generating units that damaged at Maysan Power Plant, illustrating that the electrical system has resumed its work normally after the ministry's cadres controlled the damage occurred actually at Maysan Station, which is a technical failure due to an explosion in one of the circuit breakers and current transformer boxes. The ministry also confirmed that the cadres of the ministry succeeded to restore all the power lines and generating units that were damaged, and began to gradually restore the system in the governorates of Basra, Maysan, and parts of Dhikar. The Ministry of Water Resources confirms Ankara's intention to increase water releases to the Tigris River, and that a Turkish delegation will visit Iraq to see the water reserves and the construction of dams, noting that the ministry has launched water storage from dams and reservoirs to treat the ongoing shortage, meet the needs of agriculture, treat water scarcity in the marshes and remote areas, and to push the saline tide of Shatt al-Arab. The ministry attributes the reasons for the lack of water revenues to the technical aspects and the expansion of Turkey in establishing dams and water reservoirs, besides the large population growth and the nature of water years and their change to flood years, as well as water change that negatively and largely affected the lack of revenues. Ministry of Communications revealed that it is in the process of contracting with a consulting company to establish the satellite, noting that the satellite is an ambitious project that has stopped since 2012 and has passed through the conditions of ISIS and the lack of a budget, as no investment budget for this project had been approved since 2013 until today, illustrating that a public tender has been launched for all interested companies, and the ministry now is in the process of contracting with a consulting company to determine the technical requirements and specifications for the satellite, and it will not cost the state budget any amount on the investment budget. The Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research announces that 89 Iraqi universities and governmental and private colleges have achieved competitive results in the Web Matrix Global Classification within the second half of 2022. Illustrating that the official website of the classification indicated that the University of Baghdad ranked 1710, while Diyala University came in sequence 1799, and then Al-Mustansiriya University ranked 2578 out of 11,994 universities around the world. The Ministry of Transportation announces that an earthquake was recorded in Sulaymaniyah Governorate, as the Iraqi Meteorological Organization and Seismology recorded an earthquake with a magnitude of 3.7 and 13 kilometers west of Kalar district of Sulaymaniyah province, and it was felt by the citizens of the area. The Meteorological Authority called on citizens to take caution, avoid rumors and false news, and abide by the seismic recommendations issued by the General Authority for Meteorological and Seismic Monitoring. The spokesperson for the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Major General Yahya Rasool, announces the arrest of a network specialized in counterfeiting and drug trafficking in Babel province, noting that the Iraqi National Intelligence Service is carrying out a tactical operation in Babel province in coordination with Directorate of Counter-Organized Crime in the Ministry of Interior, illustrating that a network specialized in counterfeiting and drug trafficking is arrested, and 50 million counterfeit Iraqi dinars and 40 kilograms of narcotics are seized. The Security Media Cell announces the arrest of 2 terrorists in Al-Anbar Governorate, as the cell reported that, according to accurate intelligence information of the Intelligence Division of the 10th Division and in cooperation with the 39th and 40th Infantry Brigades, an operation was launched, of which the force succeeded to arrest 2 terrorists, one of whom is in Al-Jaraishi checkpoint in Al-Ramadi, and he is among those listed in the database because he is wanted by one of the security services under a judicial arrest warrant in accordance with Article 4 of Anti-Terrorism Law, while the other is in Al-Duwaya area in Al-Garma district, and he is also wanted by the judiciary, according to the same article, confirming that the two terrorists were handed over to the competent authorities. This week, the security media cell announces the arrest of two terrorists in Al-Anbar Governorate, as the cell reported that, according to accurate intelligence information of the Intelligence Division of the 10th Division and in cooperation with the 39th and 40th Infantry Brigades, an operation was launched, of which the force succeeded to seize 10 explosive devices of different types and shapes in Al-Shihabi area in Al-Garma district of Al-Anbar Governorate, confirming that the engineering processing units took charge of lifting the explosive devices and detonating them on site. The police command in Salahuddin Governorate announces that remnants of war belonging to ISIS terrorist gangs were found during inspections in Makhul area of Beji district, illustrating that two explosive belts and a barrel containing C4 explosive with a capacity of 30 liters were found, in addition to a grenade during the inspections, confirming that all the materials were detonated in the same place and the force personnel implemented the operation returned without incident. The security media cell announces that the Federal Intelligence and Investigation Agency members in Kirkuk province succeeded in arresting 4 dangerous terrorists on a security operation. One of them worked with the so-called Abu Hamza al-Muhajir criminal camp, whilst a wanted man was arrested, according to Article 4 of the Anti-Terrorism Law in Salahuddin province, indicating that they were handed over to the concerned authorities. The security media cell announces the arrest of a wanted person in Baghdad, as the high-level intelligence effort succeeded in reaching a wanted person in accordance with Article 4 of the Anti-Terrorism Law, when a tight ambush was set up with Al-Za'faraniya neighborhood in Baghdad, and he was arrested and handed over to the competent authorities. The security media cell announces that a force from the Federal Intelligence and Investigation Agency succeeded to seize a stack containing 12 various projectiles and a 23mm ammunition container, illustrating that they had been destroyed by the engineering effort. The financial advisor to the Prime Minister, Dr. Mudhar Mohammed Saleh, confirms that the establishment of the Sovereign Fund or the Generation Fund requires approving a law for the 2022 Federal General Budget in order to be defined and to set the rules and mechanisms for the fund's work at the end of the current fiscal year, especially after the Central Bank of Iraq expressed its willingness to manage the fund, since it is the state bank and its financial agent in managing all its financial investments. A government official confirmed that floating the currency is detrimental to Iraq's economy, noting that Iraq's rentier economy makes floating the currency difficult to apply. Thus, Iraq is not considering this option currently, illustrating that the majority of the foreign currency engenders from the oil imports controlled by the Iraqi government. Therefore, floating the currency will jeopardize the Iraqi economy because of the high demand against the low supply. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization announces that its global food price index dropped for a fourth straight month last July, as cereal and vegetable oil prices declined. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for an active dialogue between China and the United States, indicating that it is impossible to solve the world's most pressing problems, such as global warming, without effective dialogue between China and the United States, of which this call comes in response to Beijing's decision to suspend its cooperation with Washington in a number of files, including the fight against climate change. US pledged $89 million in demining aid for Ukraine. The US State Department stated that these mines delay reconstruction efforts, prevent displaced communities from returning to their homes, and continue to kill and maim innocent Ukrainian civilians, indicating that the funding will deploy approximately 100 demining teams. Japanese news agencies reported that the entire Japanese government has resigned last Wednesday. As expected, the new Japanese government led by Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is expected to be announced soon. The government reshuffle was already supposed to be carried out in early September, but the Prime Minister decided to conduct it now, due to his intention to accelerate the promotion of his economic concept of new capitalism, besides the need to take action due to rising food and fuel prices, and in order to prepare in advance for the session of Parliament. From Japan to Italy. Actually, Italy has begun a campaign to vaccinate against monkeypox, with an increase in the number of infections in conjunction with warnings issued by health authorities around the world about the shortage of vaccines against the disease, as Italian Ministry of Health reports that the country had recorded 545 cases of monkeypox, which began its vaccination campaign after more than a month of similar steps for countries that recorded higher numbers of infections, including the United States, Britain, and Spain. United Nations Fund for Population Activities has appealed for $10.7 million throughout the next 6 months to meet urgent needs and to support more than 2 million Sri Lankan women affected by the economic crisis in the country, as Sri Lanka is going through fears of current economic crisis aggravation upon women and girls' health and their dignity and rights. From Sri Lanka to the United States, the Biden administration criticized Indiana's new abortion ban, considering this ban an extreme attempt by the Republicans to devastate women's rights, as the state became the first in the United States to approve such new abortion restrictions since the Supreme Court overturned a historic 1973 judgment, which protects the rights of abortion nationwide. In a statement, the White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre called the Indiana legislature move a devastating step and a radical step by Republican legislators to take away women's reproductive rights and freedom and put personal health care decisions in the hands of politicians rather than women and their doctors. From the United States to Colombia, Colombia has said its word, with the Colombian people elected renowned environmental activist Francia Marquez as first ever black woman vice president. The 41-year-old newly elected Vice President Marquez took the constitutional oath as the first female black Vice President of Colombia last Sunday, August 7th, as she secured a historic win after the polls last June, as she promised to push against the criminalization of abortion and fight racism in the country. Finally, President of the National Union of Tunisian Women Radhia El-Jourbi announced in a statement of hers the principles of women's rights, respect and gender equality to be included within the educational courses by agreement between Ministry of Women and Ministry of Education. She also said there is no turning back when it comes to the fields of rights and civil status. Those were guaranteed in the Constitution in favor of the family in general and in favor of the woman in particular. The end of this week's news coverage. Presented for you from Al-Musawat radio station. Please accept the best regards from me, your host, right here behind the mic, Taif and Najjar, and from the producer right there behind the mixer, Ahmed Salah. Join us next week. Until then, have a nice day and goodbye.